The hospital hallway fell silent the moment the heart monitor flatlined, and in that unbearable stillness, a single desperate touch changed everything. 1 second, young rookie nurse Hannah Brooks was just another unnoticed face in a crowded emergency ward in San Antonio, Texas. The next, she was being dragged away by security, accused of breaking protocol by laying her hands on a mysterious military very important person patient whose identity no one was allowed to know. She had no idea that within 48 hours, the Pentagon itself would be calling the hospital, and her life would never be the same again. If you believe in kindness, courage, and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this remind us how powerful a single choice can be. Hannah had grown up in a small, struggling town in West Texas, raised by a widowed father who worked double shifts at a factory to keep food on the table. From a young age, she learned the value of sacrifice and service. Nursing wasn't just a career choice for her. It was a calling. She wanted to be the hands that steadied someone in fear, the presence that offered comfort when pain felt unbearable. But being a rookie nurse in a massive trauma hospital was nothing like she had imagined. The pace was brutal, the pressure constant, and mistakes were unforgivable. Still, she showed up every day before sunrise, determined to prove that she belonged. One stormy night, chaos erupted in the emergency department when a heavily guarded ambulance arrived. Armed soldiers filled the corridors, sealing off entire sections of the hospital. Doctors whispered urgently, and administrators rushed about with pale faces. Hannah only caught fragments of what was happening: classified, critical condition, and high ranking. When she was assigned to assist in the trauma bay, her hands trembled, but she took a steadying breath and stepped inside. The patient was an older man, his gray hair matted with blood, his body riddled with injuries that spoke of violence and urgency. Machines beeped frantically as doctors worked with desperate speed. The tension in the room was suffocating. At one point, everything seemed to freeze. The heart monitor gave a sharp, dreadful sound, and the room erupted into frantic motion. The doctors began aggressive resuscitation efforts, calling out orders. Hannah stood frozen for a split second, watching life slip away before her eyes. Something inside her broke through the fear and the rules. She stepped forward and placed her hand gently on the man's chest, closing her eyes in silent prayer. It was a habit she had formed back home, something her mother used to do when someone was sick. It was not protocol, it was not permitted, but it was human. She whispered a few words of hope under her breath, words meant only for the fragile soul beneath her palm. Within moments, the monitor flickered back to life. A faint but steady rhythm returned. The room collectively exhaled. The doctors rushed to stabilize him, and slowly, he was pulled back from the edge. But before Hannah could process what had happened, security officers were at her side, gripping her arms and escorting her out. Hospital administrators followed, their expressions cold and unforgiving. She was accused of interfering with a classified medical procedure and breaching strict military protocol. No one asked her why she had acted. No one cared that her touch had come from compassion, not defiance. By morning, her employee badge was deactivated, and she was formally dismissed. Just like that, her dream career vanished. Hannah walked out of the hospital into the pale dawn, numb and disoriented. The city bustled around her, unaware that her entire world had just collapsed. She returned to her tiny apartment, sat on the edge of her bed, and stared at the wall for hours. Bills loomed, student loans pressed heavily, and shame settled deep in her chest. She had wanted to help, and instead, she had ruined everything. Days passed in heavy silence. She avoided calls from coworkers and ignored emails from human resources. Each night, she replayed the moment in her mind, wondering if she had truly crossed a line that deserved such punishment. But deep down, she felt no regret for the compassion she had shown. On the third day, an unexpected knock came at her door. Two men in dark suits stood in the hallway, their presence immediately unsettling. They introduced themselves as representatives of the Department of Defense. Hannah's heart raced as they asked her to sit. Her hands trembled as she waited for the inevitable legal consequences. Instead, they delivered news that left her breathless. The patient she had touched was General Robert Caldwell, a decorated war hero and one of the most respected figures in the United States military. His injuries had been life-threatening, and his survival had stunned even the most experienced doctors. Upon regaining consciousness, he had asked one question again and again: who was the young nurse who refused to give up on him? Security footage showed Hannah's unauthorized action, and while administrators saw a violation, General Caldwell saw something else entirely. He believed her calm presence and unyielding compassion had helped anchor him during those critical seconds. In a world of rigid rules and harsh discipline, her human kindness had cut through the darkness. Within hours, the Pentagon contacted hospital leadership. An investigation was launched and policies were reviewed. Senior officials questioned whether blind adherence to protocol should ever outweigh moral instinct. The narrative began to shift, and suddenly, Hannah's name was no longer associated with misconduct, but with extraordinary courage. The hospital reversed its decision. Not only was Hannah reinstated, but she was also publicly commended for her actions. News outlets picked up the story, calling her the nurse who touched hope back into a dying hero. But the attention overwhelmed her. She had never wanted recognition, only to help. When she finally returned to the hospital, the halls felt different. Nurses who had once barely noticed her now smiled warmly. Doctors nodded in respect. Even administrators who had dismissed her now spoke with humility.